I can see people joining. Hello there. My name is Lea. I am working with Snap Collective, and I'm so excited for this brief conversation that we are going to have. Already joining us here is Tracy Wright Martin, and going to publish with us, or is almost done publishing with us upcoming weeks. We're going to talk about the book, North South, which is coming very soon, and we're going to talk about a very aspect of this book, which is that it entails, or it has works in it, 20 correct, that are going to go to the moon, which is, yeah, quite a special situation, I would say, for an art book, even for us. We are also including and inviting, I just invited Dr. Peralta, who is initiator of the Lunar Codex, and I hope he'll come online with us any minute. He's going to tell us a little bit more about the background of this project, which, yeah, I think is going to be super interesting to talk about. Maybe in the meantime, up until he comes online, I already gave a little bit of an introduction. You are an award-winning mixed media artist. If this is the first book you're publishing with us, which we are very thrilled about. And yeah, I actually think, just to go a little bit more into detail with, I would love to talk a little bit about the cover of the book, not only the names, right? Because it's interesting how you position the names, but also the image you chose for the cover. And I'm going to stop talking, but I am curious specifically about the reference in the title of this work to Spanish painter. I think, however, so, yeah, curious to hear more about this.
Absolutely. Yeah, this piece is one of my favorites from a 2021 solo show that I did with 33 contemporary and poets artists. And the title of the series was Art, Herstory, and the Moth. So it's got a very complicated, very long artist statement, which will actually be in the book, that kind of introduces the section, which is kind of cool. So people can learn a lot more detail about that in the book. And but basically it was, the idea behind it is using a moth as sort of a symbol for underrepresentation. Because, you know, we typically see the butterfly a lot in cultural references. And so each piece was named for the Latin species of the moth. So that's where the long title comes into play. And then there's a visual motif that's kind of highlighted from a female artist throughout history. And so each piece in that series is kind of dives deep into a reference to that artist. And so it's a really fun series. There's a lot of symbolism that goes into that as well. But that piece in particular was chosen for the Lunar Codex as part of a 2021 exhibition entitled Quest for the Modern Figure. So the piece has had a lot of life in and around the project. So I thought, okay, that is a great piece for the cover. And then also there's kind of this nod to an exploration and kind of a whimsical sort of thing. There's a little celestial reference. And so it just seemed like a good fit for the cover image. It just sort of came together, and yeah, that's why we picked that one.
Right. So from what I've read and seen, after you found out that some of your works are actually in this that is going to land on the moon, are going to be on the moon, this artistic archive that I hope we have the opportunity to talk about in a minute. I feel like I read somewhere that you said you were going back on the way you work, and you were incorporating, you just used the word celestial, image of space and the sky a little bit more. And so do you feel like that is what all of these images are being tied together by in general?
Yeah, I think so. I think what I found to be kind of inspirational, I've been thinking a lot about sort of the ties between nature and you know, science and art and science and technology. So being included in this codex is an incredible honor to begin with. And I found it really inspirational because much like why Dr. Peralta is doing this is kind of to chronicle this time in art and history in the world and what's going on, and creating this time capsule. It made me think a lot about, you know, where my work has gone, where it's going, and how it relates, and how bringing in conversations on technology and stuff, and kind of just being inspired by the whole experience. And a lot of my work has always been about kind of the tension between inner exploration and outer exploration anyway. So there's a lot of that symbolism in the kind of concepts that I work in.
Right.
And so it kind of mirrors this time, and I wanted to kind of capture that. So in addition to having, I'm very lucky to have 20 pieces as part of the codex in various collections throughout it. And I know Dr. Peralta will talk more about that, but like, it's really fascinating to see the journey the work has taken, and kind of going back and looking at some of the pieces that were chosen and being inspired to kind of celebrate that time. So there's another body of work that I entitled after the time capsule collection called Polaris. And so it's about, I mean, the literal translation is the North Star, and it's something right away. So I was immediately inspired by that and created a different series that kind of celebrated this point in time and kind of talked further about nature and exploration. And so that just kind of became a natural title for the book.
Right.
And so, and then the idea of the flip cover, that was kind of a fun thing, just working with the designers and the editors and at Snap Collective, the kind of idea of turning it
Right.
over and having two covers
Yes.
essentially. And so it's kind of a playful nod to the idea of direction, like in a literal way for the book as well. It's kind of cool.
Forum. Yes, that's right. I wish we could show the book. Obviously, it is about to be done,
Yeah.
so we can't. But basically, the front cover says north, and the back, first, from what I understand, is saying south, right? Which obviously ties in very well with the theme of the north, like you just explained. That's very. Give me 1 second. I just think that Dr. Peralta is trying to join, and somehow it didn't seem to work, which seems to be the norm for any live Instagram. So I'm going to try and invite him one.
This is a very like, I've never done this, so yeah, I can't be of any help, unfortunately.
It's self-explanatory, I feel. I had to invite him again. Let's see. He said he wasn't able to join, but we're just gonna keep talking. I actually have a quote for you from the introductory text that he wrote for your book, which I loved. And it's the very last bit of this introduction, and he describes your work as a transcendent worlds between north and south, between the abstract and the figurative. And he says it is a discipline that draws the line from what you can imagine to what you can make real, and that, like reaching for the moon, is the very essence of the human spirit. I loved that quote because I feel like this is very much bringing both of your worlds together in a way, right? I feel like he very much makes a beautiful bridge from his work, and he is a fiction writer as well, in the Future Chronicles. He is obviously a physicist, and he's sending, he's doing this thing, this is almost unimaginable thing of sending artworks to the. So I'm curious what drew you maybe to this project, and also maybe what is your fascination with the moon itself, or what do you love about the idea of having your work on the moon?
Honestly, it's more than I ever could have imagined, the opportunity to have this big, and it really was through a lot of different channels that the opportunity came about. Really, it was mainly because of a participation and ongoing membership with poets artists, and their through 33 Contemporary. It's a very much of their focus is a lot of, contemporary realism, which is the genre of work that I produce. And so they create a lot of opportunities for exhibitions. And so my work just became part of some of these exhibitions, who were then curated and chosen by Dr. Peralta to be a part of this. So yeah, really just incredibly honored that I got to be a part of this, even just the conversation, let alone, getting to actually participate in it.
I'm sure that you could probably not fathom this anytime in the past.
No, not at all.
Artwork. Yes. Lucky.
Well, is there any way, would you like me to back and you can talk to him for a while? Can we trade off? Would that be the way to do that?
I am trying to invite him. I'm going to try one more time. I did invitation. We could try to get off and on again. Let me try. He is online, so I know he can hear us.
Yeah, if you want me to, do you want me to X out and you can talk to him for a few minutes since he's here?
We could try. I do have one more question for you, but
Of course. Yeah, I can rejoin you all too if you want, if you can try to do that.
Definitely. Yeah, actually, let's try that.
Okay.
Let's try.
All right.
Easy to work.
I'll try to get back on here.
Everybody watching, we'll be back in a sec, guys.
Yes.
There you are.
Okay.
Now I really hope that.
Hi, Tracy.
Hi. Thank you so much for joining us.
thank you guys for being here with Snap Collective. And I know that we're already over time. I promised you guys it would not take super long, but we already answered a few questions, and the live is on the Instagram now. So we saved it, we archived it. How symbolic is that?
That's
you did
great.
incredibly well, Tracy, stalling.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that.
I am so excited. I actually have been really excited for this conversation because what I love is that I feel like so many worlds are coming together, right? We have obviously, I guess we should probably introduce you one more time, Dr. Peralta. It's an honor to have you here with us in this recording. I loved your description on Instagram. I actually wrote it down somewhere how you described yourself. I think it was physicist, storyteller, and then founder of the Lunar Codex, which entails just so many things at once, right? And I think that is so interesting. I am very curious. I already talked to Tracy a little bit, who we all know now has 20 of her pieces chosen to go into the project, I think on the way. And I am, of course, super curious just to hear a little bit more about the background of how this whole project came about. What motivated you to do this?
We'll do. Tracy is just an amazing artist, may I say. She really straddles both worlds, and she's one of the few people who can basically grapple with AI, which is such a controversial topic at the moment, and basically wrestle it into something that's more in the traditional world. And it's that stepping between the two worlds that I found so interesting in her work, which is one of the reasons that I agreed to write the introduction for her book. And the introduction and her book looks amazing, by the way. I can't wait to see it in the flesh, so to speak. But so Tracy belongs to a group of artists that's been very active in furthering the figurative realism aesthetic, and it's one of the things that I do collect. I'm also an art collector. I left that out of the bio, and I've been collecting for a long decades now, anyways. And in doing that, I also became a curator for a group called 33PA Poets and Artists that who are based in the 33 Contemporary Gallery in Chicago. And among the exhibits that I curated is something called Shelter. Shelter was an exhibit that was online at the beginning of the lockdown during the early times of the pandemic. And basically, Shelter was, if you like, a harbor of hope for artists. At that time, if you remember, everything was closed. Galleries were closed, theaters were closed, music halls were closed. So it wasn't just visual artists, but all sorts of artists that were disenfranchised from their audience. So we went online, and at that time as well, there was a feeling of malaise, of depression, because we didn't know what was going to happen. It was early on in the pandemic, and nobody knew anything about this, right? It's hard to go back. Now we know a lot more about things, what you can and can't do, etc. But back then it was a big unknown. But at the same time, NASA was starting what they call the Commercial Lunar Payload Services Program. It's a sister program to Artemis, and what it would do is it would allow commercial companies, private companies, or non-governmental companies to put together lunar landers and send them to the moon, taking NASA on board as payloads. It was the same idea that led to the creation of SpaceX. If you remember, it used to be that NASA was the one who did all the rockets to the moons, and they built the lunar landers. NASA did it all from end to end. Then they said, we're out of the business of rockets. Let's others do it. And Elon Musk came in to fill that gap, and that's where SpaceX came in being. Now we have United Alliance. We have Jeff Bezos's Blue Origin. There are a few others, but SpaceX was one of the first. So the CLPS program is like that, except for lunar landers. And so 5, 6, 7 different companies were formed to try to get the funding from NASA to create these new lunar landers. And that's how this whole thing was born. Now,
Got it.
NASA is a big commercial user of the landers. They say, we'll give you $100 million. You create the lander and you bring our instruments on board. But these are commercial companies. So in the same way that SpaceX doesn't just cater to NASA's payloads, but also does Department of Defense, private satellite companies, et cetera, these other companies also provide payload spaces to other groups, universities, for example, national research laboratories. And as it turns out, some of them, they also provided payload space to people like myself. And that was the key. That was the key. So the first thing that I did was I sent up, I said, I reserved payload space for one of my poems, my own poems, because
Yeah.
I said, this is cool. I've always wanted to be an astronaut. I'll send up one of my poems.
Yes.
And I took a silver disc, inscribed it with what I wanted to inscribe, and I essentially reserved payload space for that. But it was
Right.
such a cool thing
Yeah.
that I thought, why can't I share that joy with other people?
Yeah.
So if you think in parallel, I've been curating people, artists like Tracy, into
Right.
exhibits like that, for example. I can't remember if you were in here, Tracy, but it just so happens
Not that one. Yeah.
I have
Yeah.
this catalog. This was the first one that I ever
Yeah.
curated for that group, and it's a
Mhm.
standard artist catalog. You're in the publishing world, Leah, so you know what that's like, right?
Oh
Well,
yeah. Yeah.
as it turns out, we can reduce that catalog to something that looks like that, and that's a gold card. And if I
Yes.
bring it up to the camera, you can see the image of the catalog right there.
Oh wow. Tiny, tiny, tiny. Yeah.
And you can
Oh, wow.
see all of the, if you were here with me, you'd see that they come out incredibly clear. So
Okay.
that's what we call a nanofish. But that
Right.
nanofish is made of gold. So there's a gold film on this, and we use semiconductor techniques to reduce that into that.
Right. Okay.
Now, so
Okay.
that's a gold nanofish. That's too heavy for the moon. That would cost me a ton of money to send to the moon. That's still too heavy.
Yeah.
And there's two things we can do to reduce the weight. It's because it's all about weight, right?
Right.
How many
Right.
kilograms you have to send to the moon. So
Yeah.
one thing you can do, you've already seen it done, is to miniaturize everything, make them smaller. And
Mm-hmm.
then what we do is we use a different material. We don't use gold anymore. We use nickel. And so
Mm-hmm.
you come up with a nickel nanofish, and that's something that looks like that.
Okay. Wow.
And
Yeah.
let me put this down. I'll take it out of its wrapper and bring it up to the camera if I can.
Yeah.
And I don't know whether you'll be able to see it, but
Oh wow.
if
Yeah.
when I bring it up closer, you'll see all these
Amazing.
little dots, right? So all
Wow.
those little
Incredible.
dots
It's so cool.
are
It is.
essentially, each dot is a page on a book, and that encapsulates all of Isaac Asimov's novel foundation. So it's a book like that that's
Okay.
on something the size of a quarter. And
Wow. Seen anything like this?
and just imagine this is a book, right? And what I showed you on that quarter nanofish is just imagine that each page is like Tracy's book, North and South, right? And it's filled with art. And
Right.
that's essentially what we do. We take catalogs of art and we put them on that.
Right.
That and you know art is 300 dpi, dots per inch, is a
Yeah.
usual reproduction. You can get
Yep.
better than that.
Require.
Well, this is 30,000 dots per inch.
Oh.
That's
Incredible.
how much we miniaturize it.
Mm-hmm.
30,000 dots per inch. What that means, though, in practical terms, is if you take a 1,000 times microscope, that's
Mm-hmm.
about $50 to $100 on Amazon, and you magnify this by 1,000 times, you'll get back to that 300 dpi. You will see under the microscope a 300 dpi image
Right.
because we've done that.
Wow. What I love
We've
about
for Tracy's work,
Mhm.
we've gone to that.
Yeah.
So this is the size of a quarter, and this is the size of a dime,
Yeah.
and that brings the order of miniaturization up one more time. So what happens is we take that, and that goes into a little receptacle like that, and you
Mhm.
just put it in, and you put a stack of those inside, and that's
Mhm.
essentially your museum on the moon, if you like.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's
I,
it's crazy.
Unbelievable.
yeah.
It's
This
so
is
So
cool.
arts and science together, doesn't it? I feel like.
Mhm.
that's right.
Uh,
It's a marriage of art and science. The
yeah.
cargoes that are going up are usually scientific
Right.
cargo from educational institutions, spectrometers, radar, that sort of thing. But this is one of there are only a handful of art uh, projects that are
Mhm.
going up. There's some that are preserving the work of historical artists, Shakespeare,
Mhm.
Mozart,
Oh.
so on and so forth.
Yeah.
And in fact, the first art that was on the moon preserved the work of folks like Rauschenberg, Andy Warhol, Pablo
Mhm.
Picasso, and
Huh.
and that's perfect. They are the geniuses of our time, and their
Right.
work should be preserved. But the Lunar Codex project is a little different. We're saying we're looking at this as a time capsule, a
Mhm.
snapshot of our
Yeah.
era
Yeah.
in the life of the world.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so we've taken artists, musicians, writers, filmmakers from all over the world, and we're basically preserving them in different types of media. We
Right.
started out actually with just plain old digital media, the
Mhm.
kind of like that, right? Just your regular SD card, and we still
Mhm.
use cards like that. This is a 1 terabyte card. I've moved up to 1.5 terabyte cards
Mhm.
that are shielded from radiation, and we
Right.
put film on that because we can't put film on the nanofish.
Mm.
50 frames per second. You can imagine 50 frames per second, 3 hour movie. That's a
Wow.
lot of nanofish. It gets
Yeah.
horrendously expensive. So we
Yeah.
still don't do that.
Right.
We put those on digital cards. But right now we've nanofishes are, if you like, our standard for preserving art. But
Mhm.
we are also now preserving it on a new ceramic glass matrix that I can't quite talk about yet. And
Okay.
we're also preserving it on synthetic DNA. And
Okay. Ooh.
these are two new things. And Tracy's work is actually joining this new group of works that are going to be preserved on ceramic, glass, and synthetic DNA. And it's an
Interesting.
experiment. We don't know whether it'll work.
Yeah.
This this we know will work. We know
Yeah.
this will last 10,000 years or more. And that's
Yeah.
the other thing about it. It provides for artists a virtual immortality. It will outlive their
I
life.
I love how you I read it somewhere you called it a message in a bottle. I love these images for it because it brings I feel like the essence of it so well into words, right? To create an archive, and especially I think the word contemporary archive obviously fits very well. And this is Tracy, where I can see your work in your images so well. Is that you are creating something of that lasts, right, for so long, that has such an impact for so long, and you're making it, you're sealing it in a way, right? And I think I find that is so fascinating about this whole topic, and at the same time there's almost a nostalgia to it, right? There's this idea of preserving something that might be replaced, like you mentioned digital media before, right? And how much easier that is to just take that card and use that because we already have that little format. So yeah, I love that idea. I think it's so poetic. The idea itself, the concept itself, around it, is so
There's
poetic.
there's so many things that people say about this.
Yeah.
The writers and authors, they call it the biggest anthology ever published. And
Nice.
Mhm.
Yeah.
some people say when the rocket goes up, this is the world's biggest book launch, sort of thing.
Yeah.
So so
I like that
so
too. That's great.
the
Yeah.
kind
Well,
of things you
I
hear is
yeah.
yes, Tracy.
Oh yeah, no, I was just gonna say like the idea of all the different layers of exploration and the symbolism of that, and then the idea of the technology, even in and of itself, like continue to explore technological methods of having. I'm fascinated by every layer of where that concept comes into this whole, endeavor. It's fascinating to me. I am absolutely thrilled about it.
Totally, and I feel like, sorry.
Yeah, there's no guarantees. We've had 2 launches so far. The first launch was in Orion, that was with the Artemis 1 project, and our next launch was going to be the Peregrine, which went up recently, and it was going to be our first one that would actually land on the moon. But unfortunately, as we saw in all the news, there was an anomaly that happened in their propulsion unit, and it had to return to Earth. And they did a controlled burn in the atmosphere so that it would be safe. And the artists were disappointed, obviously, and it is a bit frustrating. But we all returned to stardust in the end, and luckily we've backed up everything on other launches. So we've got 4 more launches to go. The next launch is February 14th, launching at Kennedy with SpaceX and a company called Intuitive Machines. That's February 14th. Then 2 more moon launches are Serenity and Polaris, and I believe Tracy's on Polaris as well. And she is on Serenity as well, I have to say. Not all of your works are on Serenity, but we've selected a couple to be on Serenity just so that you've got something, because space is hard. Space is really hard. There's no guarantee of success.
Right.
But one of the ones I'm excited for is a project we have called Freya. And Freya actually had a very, very tiny amount of payload space, so I could only put a very few numbers of works on it. But Freya is going to go on a journey to the moon, bypass the moon, and will go out into interplanetary space, and God willing, further on. That will be our, if you like, golden record, a new golden record to follow Voyager 2. And we're hoping that everything goes well. We're crossing our fingers because a lot can happen between now and then.
Yes, of course.
But when it does launch, it's going to be amazing.
Okay. Well, fingers
wonderful.
In Germany, thumbs pressed. I know that sounds weird, but it's the same meaning. All the best to you for the next coming missions. I love the idea. I love, I think the words of everything, or we're all going to be stardust in the end, are beautiful to conclude this brief little talk. I don't want to take too much more of your time, but this was so interesting, so informative. And I'm obviously going to put this on our Instagram account for everybody to see. And maybe people will reach out soon with lots of more questions, because I feel like this topic is so complex. We could easily talk for 2 more hours. But
it's always a pleasure to talk about this. Thank you very much for inviting me. It's what I said to an artist earlier today, is that actually it's people like Tracy who have the talent that should be in the spotlight. And it just so happens that I've got a really, really big spotlight, the moon, which I'm shining out on.
Beautiful, beautiful last words. I will not say anything more, and I agree. Thank you so much for joining us and for publishing this beautiful book with us, which is coming out very soon. So yeah, I wish you guys all.
Thank you both. I appreciate everything.
Thank you very much.
Pre-order it now.
Yes, exactly. Pre-order.